Today's video is roundtable number 3, shot last week over in Amsterdam with Ray from DCRainmaker, Des from DesFit, and myself. We are 3 independent media creators in the sports tech space, and we just shoot the breeze for what was going to be 15 minutes about how we create content, but it ended up being 45 minutes. But I think the conversation was worth listening to. I found it very fascinating listening to how Des creates his content around his in-depth watch reviews, and as always, Ray from DCRainmaker and his posts and videos and how he combines the two, and how he goes about promoting and marketing his content using other social media platforms. So here it is, roundtable number 3. Enjoy. Alrighty, welcome to roundtable episode number 3. Our final one, a more casual chat today. We've got Des from DesFit. How you doing, Des?
Hello, everybody.
You're good?
Oh, absolutely.
Busy morning so far. Ray from DCRainmaker.
It's going good, busy as you said. And
the reason why we're busy is for the reason why we're going to be talking about today. It's content creation in the tech, sports, IT space. Just a little bit behind the scenes of what we're up to, what it takes to put out a 5-minute video or a 15-minute video, because it's a lot more than just 5 or 15 minutes in production time. So what I'm going to kick off today with my overview, or my spin, on what it takes to get something put up online. And I've done one just before, so I'm fresh, ready to go. I've got my list down pat about what took place this morning, which is actually quite a quick one. I think it was only an hour and a half.
It's not too bad.
Which is an exception to the rule.
Absolutely.
So I'll just go quickly straight into this one. My videos, I start off, and we'll go around the table here about how everyone else creates their content as well. My videos, I have an idea and a concept, whether it's a new product, an old product, indoor, outdoor, what resources I require. That's really at the concept stage of where things are at. I look into the background. Has someone else covered it? Has Ray already covered the product? Has Des put out a video on this? Will there be any crossover that's just straight duplication? Or can we get away with just my take? If there's a new trainer, I think we can get away with duplicating content there with our take on things. But if something like GCN come along and did how to change a tire with a certain method, and I do the same thing a week later, you can't really duplicate content like that. So I look at the background, the popularity, the crossover. I have to then acquire the product if it's a product. Or loan it or buy it. Off the shelf's always easy because there's no obligation at all there at all. You're just a straight consumer. You're not getting something that may have been... People say a lot of the time when we get a product, oh, they sent you a special unit. Now, typically that doesn't actually happen. It's too hard for companies.
It's usually the inverse, in fact. Most times when we get stuff, it's worse than the consumer stuff.
Yeah.
Like it really is. It's something I think, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but like on one of the tech channels out there, Linus Tech Tips, they talked about like when they get boards and stuff and computer chips and how generally speaking, the performance of those are actually worse than consumer ones for a lot of reasons. Usually it's early in the product cycle, usually it's first run stuff. And that's definitely from what I've seen on all watches and all trainers especially, that when we do our tests, the product is almost always at its worst and it almost always gets better down the road, even just by release. And that's something like I try to time my releases to product availability with final firmware and final hardware. It's kind of like my line in the sand for a quote in-depth review. Everything else could be on who knows what, but for like an actual in-depth review, it's final hardware, final software.
But interestingly enough, as we mentioned yesterday, or in our roundtable number 2, I believe, that incomplete firmware definitely, or roundtable number 1, maybe, I don't know, one of the two, that incomplete firmware, definitely can push things out a little bit. So, even for the consumer, everyone may have to wait a little bit.
That's why off the shelf can sometimes be always the better way to go. Wait a little bit, get good quality products and cooked firmware first before we get in and start breaking things. So that's only halfway through my list of what it takes to get through the idea and concept of putting a video together. Then it goes into the testing, validation, and more testing, which comes into, is the data good? Is the quality of the data good? Do I need to go out and ride for 3 or 4 days with this thing? Do I need to break it? Do I need to speak to the manufacturer about the problems that I've been encountering? And then video shoot ideas and concepts, how to shoot the thing. So if it's a pedal, how do you shoot a pedal? Like it's sort of a pedal's a pedal. Smart trainer's not too bad. You've got inside. What can you do outside? The GoPro Hero 7's kind of helped out with its decent action cam quality footage. The editing, I use Final Cut Pro for mine. I moved over from iMovie. So the video production side of things, that's not really my skill set. I just need to put things together and go. Time better spent riding a bike outside than sitting inside making it all look nice. And then post-production as well. So that's also, so once the video is done, put out, posted, edit it all up, it's about the thumbnail, the metadata, the publishing across other social media platforms as well, which we'll talk about in a sec. So that's my general overview of a product. That's the concept, the idea, getting one, putting it all together. There's just a few hours in it before we even get rolling. Des, just a quick overview on your product.
Well, yeah, I don't know how quick mine's going to go exactly. So most of my videos, at least recently, I don't want to say recently, maybe in the last 9 months to a year, they're pretty darn comprehensive. So the process for my videos generally are pretty long, unfortunately. So I am trying to buck that trend a little bit, where I'm trying to have some intermediate content where people don't necessarily have to wait a month or two sometimes for a review, just because.
By the way, is your Apple Watch Series 4 video out yet?
That's a rough subject there, Shane. That is one I'm going to be working on as soon as I leave Amsterdam. So stay tuned for
waiting for that one. We're waiting for that one.
Everyone's waiting for that one apparently. So, yeah, at the same time, most of my videos are very comprehensive. So very much like Ray's posts are very comprehensive. So that's kind of what I'm doing on the video side of things. So. Yeah, unfortunately for me, the process is going to be a lot longer. So what I'm trying to do more recently is kind of do more first impressions, a few first couple tests, test it over long term, and then actually have a comprehensive review, eventually, I guess you could say. So so for me, the crossover, kind of like talking about, Ray's posts and my videos, again, it's like we have different takes on the devices. So we generally don't necessarily step on each other's toes. Like I think I've mentioned before that, Ray's more of a road biker, I'm more of a mountain biker. Same thing with Shane here too. He focuses on indoor trainers. So there's quite a bit of complementary content there, right? I believe. So and then in terms of the testing, yeah, that's again goes back to the firmware question of is the firmware even ready? So for the product to actually be tested. So again, that's where the first impressions kind of comes into play, where I think you want to give the the viewer some sort of content at first, and then really thoroughly test it over time. So and then in terms of the filming and recording, well, that's always interesting when you're doing it by yourself. So what's been great about this little collaboration here is that we've been able to help each other with our filming, and it's helped immensely. I think.
Yesterday I threw the camera. I said, look, I need 5 minutes. You hold the camera, grab this, and we know where to point and shoot. It's so much handier, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We did it at Eurobike this year as well. Just like throw the camera between each other and away we go.
Especially just silly things like framing. Framing is the toughest thing to do by yourself. Like we were filming some stuff yesterday just right here for me, and just to have Shane just walk in real quick and be like, is that framed properly?
Is your head cut off?
Is my head cut off when I stand up, when I sit down? Yeah, you can have small monitors, but when you're across the room from the camera, because a lot of stuff we film is on bikes, so you have to have a lot of headroom, you have to be far away from the cameras for the lenses to work. It's not just like sitting in front of a desk like right now, where it's like, oh, the camera's right there, I can clearly see that we're all in the frame. It's so nice to be able to like do, yep, does this work? Versus back and forth, and you lose so much time doing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of just a very simple point of when you're filming something and the camera's far away, well, how do you get focus properly? Yeah. That's as simple as that. Yeah. So, and then on to editing. I am, I think, the only person in this room that uses Premiere Pro. So I'm a Premiere Pro user. It just allows me a little bit more flexibility. I've tried to use Final Cut Pro. It's definitely different. So
I think it's a little easier, Final Cut Pro, because I've got based out of iMovie, or iMovie is based on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I've sort of come in I feel like I'm like painting an MS Paint, and then moving up to say maybe not quite Photoshop,
Yeah, and I have a long background with Photoshop, so I'm very familiar with the Adobe ecosystem of the Creative Cloud suite of products. So it is easy for me to use Premiere Pro. And then the editing process, well, that's very lengthy for me, just because we're collecting a lot of data over a lot of time to put it together a really comprehensive review. Oftentimes, my bigger reviews, there are 3 full days of editing. I saw like 8 hours of editing, per day, so 24 hours, and quite frankly, I'm kind of exhausted a lot of the time after those really.
Once it hits upload, you're done. You have
I kind of check out and I'll see you later. I'm probably going on a bike ride.
Yeah,
so, exactly. Actually, that's kind of funny story. Usually, when I'm done with everything, I click upload. I usually hop on the bike immediately. Don't think about it, and just kind of let it upload.
Let it do its thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then so I think that's probably all from my end for this section. But yeah, go ahead, Ray.
So
where do we start?
Your stuff sounds really well structured. So that whole like planning, so Shane on his thing here, he has idea, concept, background, popularity, crossover, product loan, all that. There's a lot of planning that's going on here, idea, scripts, etc. I don't do any of that. As you guys have known, I just either sit down and start typing until I'm done posting, or I just get in front of the camera and just completely ad-lib it until I'm done done. Like the only ones that I have some structure in tend to be like if I do a 16 or 20 things about a given product video, that I will type that out merely so I can count the numbers correctly. So then I get to like number 18, it's actually number 18. Otherwise you edit the video and you're missing like 14 and people are like, you're an idiot. So those are the only ones that I actually do structure out in Notepad. And I just basically put it like one line item of what that thing is. So number 4 is this, number 5 is this, and so on. And then I shoot the video, and then I come back and I usually shoot B-roll afterward if I need B-roll from a video standpoint. From a post standpoint, since that's actually different than you guys, and I have the written content is the majority of what I do. I write the entire post first, and then I put little XXXs in there for the photos, and then I go back and I add the photos and screenshots afterwards. I used to try to do the other way around, but I realized it wasn't super efficient, that you'd be taking photos and then you have to go back. The photos didn't match and continuity didn't match. I still take a ton of photos with the products over time, especially for watches. Like if I'm out running somewhere and want to get those like mid-run type photos, I'll do that over time. But most of what I do is bunched around the unboxing piece, and then bunched around after I've written the whole review up. I just go and grab the photos I need to be done with it. Much cleaner. From a video editing standpoint, I use Final Cut like Shane. I post. I'm not like super far out when it comes to like posts and stuff like that. Like I know you have a lot of stuff scheduled ahead of time, and for me it tends to be like I hit publish and I'm done. Like the post this morning was kind of over breakfast. It's like, oh, Interbike was canceled, Zwift released their thingy, and Apple went ahead and released ECG functionality. Let's do a post on it. I arrived. The post is now done, minus one photo I've got to take of this and a couple screens I've got to take. It'll be up within whatever. So my entire time to edit that or create that post was just shy of 2 hours, I think, all in. And that was probably a little belated because of the fact that we were also doing other things here and people coming in and grabbing things, stuff like that. But that's my process. I wouldn't say I got a lot of thought into it, unfortunately.
Actually, funny story, basically, the first video that Ray and I did, basically we had no idea what we were really going to be doing, and 30 minutes later we were shooting a video on dual active track, and it was just an idea that Ray came up with really quick, and so I think he's really good off the cuff like that.
It does help, absolutely. Now, the text versus video, talk a little bit about that, because text itself, you've knocked that out in that post in 2 hours or so.
Yeah.
If you were to do that in video,
it would
how much longer?
Take me longer, a lot longer, because there's 3 different topics that I'm doing. It depends on how I do it, to be honest. Like I think if I'm doing it sort of like what you did today with the Zwift piece, where you're sitting in front of a green screen and just like bam, 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 and adding in the screen recording afterwards, like that's fairly straightforward. I think like the Apple Watch ECG one, if I were to do that in video, would add more complexity because I'm trying to now hold it, watching for all that kind of stuff starts to build and build and build. It makes it tougher and tougher. The other piece there was the Interbike piece. Again, that's a little bit easier one because I can just do that straight up. But like for me to write an in-depth review, the written text in in-depth review, generally I would say 2.5 to 3 hours all in. So the whole thing, pretty darn quick. The photos of a review depends on the product. So for some products like a trainer, like I can do an entire trainer review in an afternoon, all in. I'm not including the riding time. That's the outlier. So the riding time, the testing time, that's what takes the weeks. And as Des mentioned, like when firmware is not complete, or if there's some sort of issue there that you have to back out, or that's what takes the most time. But like consistently for me, power meter reviews and trainer reviews, end-to-end text and photos and analyze and all that kind of stuff, an afternoon pretty easily. Whereas a Garmin watch, a Polar watch, any sort of multi-sport thing, those are the bane of my existence when it comes to the content part of it, because there's so many pieces of it to figure out. Like does it work swimming? Does it work running? Does it work cycling? Does it work elevation? All that kind of stuff. It takes a lot longer for me to do that. So I would say that's probably an entire day and a half of writing, and then the photos is probably another 2/3 of a day because they're so diverse. And so I don't just want to sit here inside and get the photos there. I want to go outside and make sure the photos in the right places for that. So that takes a lot longer. The text is nice though because I can edit it afterwards. I can kind of tweak things, whereas YouTube, once it's there, it's there. And like if you even make a tiny mistake, you got to re-render everything. Like even before it goes live, it just takes way longer to fix those sort of things than it does on text.
Unforgiving, for sure.
Absolutely. If you struggle a word or skip something or mentioned some sort of technicality that's not quite right, it's kind of there forever on YouTube. We've been loving or wanting the feature of editing in place, but then, yeah, I'm not
Well,
sure.
yeah, and that's definitely the case again with watches. Is it is so expansive in terms of their feature sets and what they can do that we try to cover as much as we can, but it is kind of impossible to cover absolutely everything. But if we miss one thing, we might get hammered in the comments.
Speaking of the firmware updates as well, a lot of the times we'll do a review on a unit, even a watch, I guess, and then we have, here's all the features, the functionality, here's how it works, and the next day, bang, a firmware update comes out that changes everything. And in video, we're stuck with that. We'll need to do another video on top of that. On text, do you often go back and do updates to posts? Or
Not as
new
much
posts?
anymore, no. I don't think it's tough to be sustainable to, I do new posts, so it's tough to be sustainable to update every in-depth review with every firmware update out there. So sometimes I'll do it for major things that I know are coming, that are expected, that I'll put a placeholder and say, hey, this firmware update's on the way. So great example of that is the Apple Watch ECG functionality, where they announced that, a product announcement, say it's coming later on this year, it just dropped today. I have a section in my already existing Apple Watch in-depth review that I said, hey, it's not here today, someday I'll come back and I'll add that text in there. So I'll take what I wrote today as a new post and I'll publish that as part of like a roundup thing. And then I'll probably pull that little bit of text and pull that back into my in-depth review as well. But yeah, in some ways I almost don't want to encourage it either. Like I want to encourage firmware updates for functionality, sure, that's great, and for fixes, that's great. But I think it becomes problematic when a product starts off with a feature set and then a year later, it's a dramatically different feature set that doesn't look anything like the original. And then the company comes back and says, hey, can you please update your review to include all this new stuff? It's like, well, get your products together and update it, do that at the beginning. Like it's not, and from a marketing standpoint, it's stupid too, because product reviews are written in those first 3 to 4 weeks. And that's what lives on the internet for eternity. And some companies have learned that lesson really, really hard. Timex learned it really, really hard. Adidas with their Smart Run GPS, where those units went out and they had bad reviews to begin with, and people didn't buy those because 2 years later people found really in-depth and deep reviews, not just mine but others out there, and they're all based on that first month. And so I think like Polar is going to have that same issue with the Vanta series, where most reviews will be written in 2018, where the feature set is very, very slim, and so the casual consumer coming around, they look at that feature set and say, oh, now it could be 2020 when they look at that review, and depending on the reviewer, they may or may not have updated it, and that's tough. And I think
first impressions last. I mean, I'm just thinking about the original Flux units that came out. We had a few troubles with those. The Vector 3s have been tainted forever, I think, on those. Even though the Vector 3s that you had were okay, the second set that I had 12 months later have been just fine. But it's now the Vector 3, and people know the history of those based on first impressions of a lot of people.
And I think we see that like to GoPro's credit, for example. GoPro does the opposite. GoPro releases their product, and it is what it is. Like there are some minor tweaks they make to it over the course of that 1 year from a firmware standpoint, little things that don't really even surface to the level of review, like mentioning it in most cases. But that's it. Like they drop that product each September, and they're like, donezo, next. And so those reviews are good, if you will, long term.
Didn't a few people actually review the hypersmooth stabilization? Because didn't with Hero 7 Black, didn't the initial ship units not have the initial firmware on it with the hypersmooth stabilization? I think that happened. Actually.
Yeah, because GoPro will typically, like most manufacturers, they'll basically do a bunch of hard manufacturing ahead of time. So GoPro have been stocking units likely since August sometime into September, and that firmware wasn't baked yet, right? So that some of those features weren't even enabled until you plug in your brand new camera from Best Buy and get your firmware update.
Exactly.
Yeah, because a lot of times people are like, oh, it's not showing up on 40K 60 and stuff like that. And it's like 4K 60, you got a first firmware update.
It's always one of the processes I go through with opening a device.
Absolutely.
App comes out before I even use the thing. Check the firmware updates and try and be bleeding edge, because you're going to have those enabled straight away. So I guess the answer there and what it takes to put a post or a video together could be anything depending on content. So from a few hours to a few days. It's, there's no set time limit on that. Over to live streams, which is a little easier. Des?
I don't do live streams.
You don't do live streams?
Yeah, well, until maybe this evening.
We will be doing one this afternoon, so I'm looking forward to that. For me, live streams, they're much easier than putting a video together, because they just go live. So for me, each live stream that I do has a purpose, which is either an event or a focus on something. So I'll sit down. The other day, Veronica was getting her Tron bike unlock on Zwift after a certain amount of elevation gain. So we sat there and rode through that. Or it's a Q&A based on a new product that I have. I think the Neo 2, I went live with that. They're much easier to put together with OBS, green screens, and all those tools. You just hit go and we can talk bikes all day long. So much easier there. And then during stream, though, I guess there's an update of moderating the comments and moderating the stream health. So that's also something to try and do. And doing it solo, as you're saying about filming solo, it's hard to do. Also moderating and trying to film things or to do a live stream and keep things sane in the chats. YouTube have a few little tools there now. We can get away with banning bad words and things like that. But yeah, there's still some interesting things going on there. And then once you're done with the live stream, though, that's it. You're done. You hit go. You hit finish.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like done. Rather than you've compressed the video and then the work starts about uploading it, doing the thumbnail, doing all the metadata and things like that. So, Ray, your live streams, how have they been going?
Good. I think for like I said, we're doing one this afternoon, and I think we're going to try a different approach with using. So I typically use Elgato Game Capture HD, I believe it is, and I pump it up to YouTube that way or Facebook, whatever it is. And I think today we're going to try to OBS hopefully. So you're going to school me on that. So we're going to do what you would never advise doing, which is we're going to come back here about 90 minutes before the live stream. We're going to completely change the entire everything, and we're just going to go for it. You'd say don't change your equipment on race day. Yes, we're going for the biggest live stream we've had, and we're going to change equipment 90 minutes beforehand and hope for the best.
Worst case scenario, we can pull a phone out and go live on a phone because the equipment we have, which we'll talk about later on, isn't really anything special.
I actually don't think we can because of the way we set up this live stream. We set it up as a scheduled event where we have to ingest content. We set it up fancy style. So
we're deep in here then.
We're deep. We've committed at this point. So it'll be, but in general live streams for me, if I can get to the first 60 seconds, if I can give the 60-second marker on a live stream, I'm good. It's getting to that 60-second marker, right? It's kind of like getting to the start line. It's the same thing. If you can get 60 seconds in and the whole thing is functioning, you're done for the day. Like you got to do the content, but it's easy. You've done it today.
The work's done. Exactly.
But
it's just talking.
It's getting to that 60-second point. And I think that's where the entire live stream process is still way too complex. Like what we're doing this afternoon shouldn't be this complex. But just silly things like the fact that there's 3 of us here. How do we get good quality audio for that, right? And you sit there and you try to go, okay, well I can pull out to where does it go to?
It's over there.
Yeah, so we've got a mic that we just put here in the middle. That actually does get really good audio, ignoring the echo in here and stuff. But that mic, if we use it with the game capture, we have to use it with even Elgato or OBS, we have to introduce some slight bit of delay to either the video or the mic to make the two match by X number of milliseconds. So we got to work that this afternoon as well. All that stuff is complex to get like really good stream quality, which is funny because like you said, if you use your phone,
it just works.
It just works. We can just mount an iPad here, but it'd be great.
We may have to do that. We'll see. Yeah, we'll have 3 separate YouTube channels going up the same live stream, 3 different phones.
So it's basically going to be a massive success or massive failure.
We go big.
It's going to just burn.
Aim high, crash hard.
There you go.
All good. So I find with my live streams, it's the first few words. As long as I get those out, and I think one the other day I introduced a live stream and stuttered, and you cannot stutter. You cannot fix a live stream. There's no jump cuts in live streams. And I'm like, and then I had to make a joke of, look, I stuffed those words up. Keep rolling with it. But I guess that's what people want. It's just what you expect. It's a conversation. It's live. It's not jump cut.
And I think in some ways they're almost less stressful than doing the actual, an non-live sort of thing. Like non-live, all of us the last few days we were seeing each other like recording stuff, and I was almost waiting for my cough.
You wouldn't want to get behind the scenes of my
morning. I almost this morning was going to be like, and attempt number 7 going for Shane on this one, but then he actually nailed it on attempt number 6. So I was just waiting. But we're all the same way. And I think sometimes like you sit there and you've done it like 5 times now, and you're like, I just wanted this to be good. Versus live stream, once you start talking, you got to treat it like conversation. And normally in a conversation, you don't like retake things, so you just kind of go with it.
I reinvent new words when I'm trying to do straight to camera things. Is that? Hang on, retake. And then once you mispronounce a word, you'll always continue mispronouncing it. It's just.
You gotta remember to just stop sometimes and just be like, just hold a second.
I'd happily go live every single time, but unfortunately you need camera angles for unboxing a trainer or something like that. You can't really get all the data in one spot and analyze it.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely love to, but I definitely I stumble over my words a bit more than these 2 gentlemen right here. But and that's going back actually to the filming process as well. Is that my A roll? I'm pretty hard on myself, I guess you could say. So if you see a 10-minute video, there's probably 40 minutes of recording actually that I have to chop up from there. So it's definitely not as seamless as it seems. It's magic.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We got the amount of content that you capture versus actually
SD cards all day long.
All day long.
Oh yeah, especially like, I mean, you know, it's like for action cam type, or even like with your action cam stuff that you did with all the different angles. Like for me, action cam videos are the worst because you have so much content from so many cameras and so much audio to sync up that you're just like, oh.
But when they come out well,
Oh yeah,
it's worth doing. It's totally worth doing. But yeah, the time behind the scenes. Okay, so that's our content put together. That's some live streams away from YouTube, our other social platforms that we use. So I use Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, SlowTwitch, other forums. I'm just having a chat about how we use those things. And do we use that to drive content to our YouTube channels, or do we use it to drive to our websites? For me, Twitter's more, I've had Twitter since 2007, I think. My Twitter account's a teenager, or getting close to it. I use that more for conversational things. Again, you've got to be careful what you say on there. But Instagram's taken over the pictures. Like, it's just, I missed the boat with Instagram early on. I didn't think it was going to be a platform people use. I put one photo up of a bike, and a year later I put another bike up, and then I missed the boat. So I've started using Instagram quite a lot, and that's the place to be for pictures, movies, and little videos, not so much. Facebook, again, drives people towards my YouTube channel when I put a video out. Reddit, I participate in a few conversations there, and SlowTwitch and other forums as well. So that's my use of other platforms to pretty much drive people towards the YouTube channel and the conversations within there. Because for me, if you're going to ask a question, if you can put it on the YouTube comment, everyone sees those, which are really, really handy. Des, your use of other social platforms?
My Twitter account is an infant compared to yours for sure. So I basically use Twitter and Instagram really for content updates, essentially, just because, again, a lot of my content does take a long time to come out for the comprehensive review. So I like to kind of supplement my videos with some updates on Twitter and Instagram. Now that YouTube stories are out, I may utilize that a little bit more for that sort of content. But it's very interesting too in terms of what type of audience you get from each as well. And you know, a lot of those platforms don't cross over in terms of those audiences. So you definitely have to nurture each of those platforms.
The geography of my Twitter and Instagram are mainly Melbourne, Australia. My YouTube is not. So it's really, I get not a lot of crossover between the one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and then from there, I actually, I do have a Facebook page. I do not nurture that as much as I need to.
I've been tagging you in it with the posts.
I know, absolutely. So yeah, basically these guys are definitely pushing me to get a little bit more active on that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely important to have those social platforms to essentially just supplement that content. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right, your use of Twitter. I see you use Twitter for both promotion of your content and also a few conversations. I saw you tweeted Eric Min the other day about a clarification around it.
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter. I'd say like if you're trying to get a hold of me for a quick thing, Twitter's definitely the best place to do that. So Twitter's where I generally promote like content. It's also where I'm having conversations with people and, you know, tweeting out little things, little photos and stuff. I have an Instagram account, but I have what's ended up being a 1 photo per month policy.
I mean, be a good photo.
It's got to be a good photo. So it's funny. For me, my Instagram, obviously, crap tons of people follow me there, but I actually only follow really basically friends in real life. That's it. So. That's pretty much it. So I don't like follow brands on Instagram. I don't do any of that kind of stuff there. I don't follow random people I don't know. It's like, have you been to my home sort of thing? It's kind of where the line in the sand is basically. Or are you like actual like family? So for me, that's how I kind of treat it. But when I post to Instagram, I have all these weird rules in my head that don't make any sense whatsoever. So like it has to be like a photo that you look at and you're like, holy crap, that's really cool. So I wanted to like that photo, like, oh yes, I'm super proud of that photo from a photo standpoint. Or it has to definitely be like sports related. So I may take photos of like that are pretty in a location but have nothing to do with sports. So there's like some sport tie in there. And so that ends up being like just once a month. So I might improve that down the road eventually. Twitter's where most of the things are. I do have Facebook. I post there, mostly my posts and videos a little bit. But I don't tend to carry conversations there because the tools for Facebook to do that are just really cumbersome. When you're posting a lot, like I can't easily see, maybe I can, but I don't know how to easily see all of the inbound comments across all posts based sort of by time, right? I have to go to one post to look at that. It just doesn't really scale well for me to do that. Beyond that, I am on SlowTwitch. I browse Reddit a little bit, but I more read than I answer stuff there and whatnot. SlowTwitch, I read frequently, but I don't necessarily comment as much anymore. I used to in the past, but I don't know. It's kind of become a bit of a more, I don't want to say sour place, but it's really tough to post there without things spiraling very, very quickly. I know there's been some conversations from Dan and Phil around that lately to try to address some of that, but it's still, to me, everything just spirals really quickly out from anything. So even when you're trying to be super helpful to someone, it's just like...
I use Slow Twitch as a guide of what's interesting and what's new.
Yep.
Does it pop up in the first 20 posts of Slow Twitch? So for example, when the Neo 2 was announced, I'm like, oh, is this really? Because usually new tech, straight at the top. The Neo 2 didn't make it to the top 20 ever of a post. I'm not even sure there was a Neo 2 post over on Slow Twitch. I'm like, oh, that's telling.
Yeah.
P2s, again, talking about our refreshes of product that weren't revolutionary. I don't think they even popped up on there. But if something really interesting comes out, IQ squared, power meter, straight to the top.
Sure,
People want to talk about that. So I use Slow Twitch as a bit of a guide. I do have to say though, it's like there's a lot of negativity on those. But the recent YouTube that I had, where YouTube, all of those platforms had an absolute massive showing of support for what I do. So there is some really good things on those platforms. So while we do focus on the negative quite a bit, there's some really good people there. And
there's a lot of really good people. It's really clear. There's a ton of awesome people on Slow Twitch doing a ton of awesome stuff. It's just the bad apples. It's the whole, like, there's a few bad apples.
They stand out. Like, same with our videos. If someone has a bad comment, we've got 1,000 good comments. We're like, why is that a bad one? We want to rectify that. So yeah,
and I know Dan is, again, doing stuff to, like, try to weed out those bad apples and put them in timeout, whatever the case may be. It's just tough to, like, change that culture. It's just tough to shift the direction of that
We see it everywhere. You put enough people in, there's going to be one or two that need to be. Anyhow, let's move on to this one. Okay, I do have listed here failures of videos. Let's skip over that. We know what the failures are. We've already talked about that. Failure in firmwares, forgetting to turn the camera on, being out of focus.
Forgetting to turn the mic on. Speaking of which, did we do
I don't know. Do we really want to skip this? Because
battery levels, like there's so many failures. And I mean, that's what we all go through. But let's focus on the successes, because there's two successes of this. Now, I think my successes of videos or product things that I produce, it's more of a result on trying to minimize my exposure to failure. So trying to line up everything first. And what I've got listed here, and I'll say it, keeping clear of shit products. It's not as if we don't review things that are bad or we don't like, but just things that you look at it, and again, if they don't make the top list of the Slow Twitch, people are talking about, it's not going to be it. It's something like those nasal things that just don't have any real science behind them. You try and steer clear of gimmicks. I think that's what it's about. Also, product success as well. For me, a product success is when it does exactly what's written on the box. That's really the whole crux of everything that I do. If it says it's between plus or minus 2.5%, and we've got a known good power source to compare that to, if it's within that, happy days, job done. A lot of the times they're not though. Yep. So for me, that's a product success and content success. Des, how would you describe a success of either content, product?
Yeah,
what's happy days for you with a video or a post?
With a video, that means that I actually have clean audio, a video that's in focus, and that's the thing for audio. The thing with YouTube is that audio is going to be more important than your video. And for me, I actually record 3 different audio sources when I actually record a video. Yeah, absolutely. So, so sometimes I'll lav up. Sometimes I'll have a shotgun mic that's boomed over my head. And then sometimes I even just have a microphone on the camera just as one last backup, because you just never know what happens. Before this video right here, made sure that the lav mics weren't necessarily rubbing on any clothing or anything like that. I had a GoPro video where, my collar was rubbing on.
We don't have the issue, but Vaughn and I in the car, we do Llama drives, her hair rustles on. I'm like, I never thought of, obviously, I never thought of that, but all the little tiny things, you'll make that mistake once, and then you minimize failures in the future for.
Someone said the other day, and they asked about, I think, episode number 1 of this whole thing. They said, why did Ray take off the cap off the water bottle? They said the water tastes better or something like that. And the reason is actually purpose. It's because
I can show the example. I've been drinking out of this with the lid on.
Sorry, Bobby.
So it's the squirt, and because our mics are right here, it's really loud. And depending on how the air goes in and out, how big a breath, like it could actually be a horrifyingly loud sound on the mic itself. So I did this. Now, if you watch the first time I did it, I didn't realize, and I went like this, and water went everywhere. It was just bad. But
okay, now links below to that example.
But it's all the nuance type stuff. Like the fact that Des actually has a green shirt underneath his coat there. So he put a hoodie zippy thing on. I might change shirts for the live stream later on today.
I'm just going to green screen your shirt outright now.
I think there's a roller coaster or something going on.
We could put a floral shirt on you with a green screen. So even things like that. I've done that on live streams with the towel that I had the other week on the Llama Live. I was, wiping off the sweat, and it was a green towel. I disappeared behind the towel. on the live stream.
Oh, sure.
Didn't even think. So all those little things like that.
Well,
You can have fun with that. But
Yeah, I mean, Ray and I were talking the other day that you generally have to shave about maybe a day before for your face because, I mean, if you nick yourself, it's like, oh my gosh, you can't have that on camera either. So yeah, just different stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of product successes, again, it's, I mean, if you can try to steer away from the products that you kind of know, it's like, as Ray said, and I believe his open house, it's like, yeah, you can tell pretty quickly generally if it's gonna be, a massive failure. So yeah, you just try to steer clear of those devices. But again, it kind of comes down to, this is where, again, with testing devices too, where if you're trying to test one device, well, you can't just compare it against one, and you can't necessarily compare it against two either. It's like if you have a third, that way you can actually get 3 different data sources that are backups in case one of them were to fail. So again, it's really just making sure that you have redundancy in place to make sure that your tests don't go.
which all adds to the production time as we spoke about early on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think for me, so it's interesting. For me, I don't necessarily steer away from crappy, disastrous products. I tend to focus on products I think are most interesting for the widest number of people, or are just really interesting to me personally, right? And it's like, yeah, that probably is actually going to do pretty poorly as a poster or as a video, but that's a super cool thing that I think is fun. I want to talk about. So that tends to be my thing, but there are like tons of examples where I'll talk about a product that's horrendous. For me, more the challenge is figuring out which products to talk on which mediums, right? So being I have both YouTube and the site, some products do better on one versus the other. So in general, action cameras and drones tend to do far better for me on YouTube than they do on the site. And then inversely, things like GPS watches and stuff like that, and cycling devices tend to do far better on the site than on YouTube. So it's a matter of figuring out which things will go to both places, which things will go to one or the other, deciding up front. And then I think there is an element to, when I'm looking at products, figuring out is it going to be interesting for folks, and then also how is that company going to react to that, and not in terms of like positive or negative, but how are they to deal with, right? So like there are some companies that are new to this space, oftentimes in Asia, not to generalize, but just in terms of what my experience has been, that don't understand how we do reviews. And so they've approached and they're like, we want to pay you for this review? And I'm like, I don't accept paid payments for any reviews or anything like that, so no. And they keep pushing and pushing, and then they're just very forceful on like what they want to change or not change. I'm like, you don't get a say, you don't get a preview, you don't get to see it, you don't get anything. I publish it and I always email companies the moment I publish, when I remember, that to say if there's anything technically inaccurate about my post, I'm happy to change it ASAP. And that's the exact wording I use, technically inaccurate. If you didn't like it, tough nuggets, but and if that's fine, but I want to make sure I have the most technically accurate content. And so if there are some companies that they send back this massive things of things they didn't agree with, then I'm like, well, none of those are technical things. They're purely you didn't like the way I portrayed something, or like I'm sure my post going out today, I have a feeling that both Zwift and Strava will be displeased with the way I portrayed certain things on that. It's right, by the way I portrayed that, but they might not necessarily like that. But I think that's why people approach all of us, that we're willing to say it is the way it is, and tough.
The difference between reading a PR sheet and actually having an opinion on something and some expertise behind the scenes. So yeah, I do appreciate those ones. I do like a read of yours. The red wine posts, I think we need more red wine posts.
We need. We're going to lunch here soon, so this could
look out for the
spiral.
live stream.
This live stream could be even more disastrous than it already might be.
Speaking of lunch, we'll wrap this one up pretty quick, but a couple of more, just quick ones. Content success. Des, do you know if a post or a video is going to do well? Or has something come out of the blue and done well that you didn't quite recognize was going to be?
Yeah, I had one particular video that took off.
I'll link below to these ones as well. So
absolutely, yeah. I don't necessarily know why exactly it took off. The only 2 theories I have are basically a good thumbnail and the fact that I actually went through the menu. So basically it was the Galaxy Watch. So
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't necessarily the first to market with it or anything like that. It was just I don't know. The algorithm just took off for some reason. So yeah, there are some videos that will take off, way more than you even expect. At the same time, yeah, a lot of my stuff, again, because my reviews do take a lot longer, I don't want to say there's maybe a little anticipation, I guess you could say, for those videos. So yeah, I can tell, or I can kind of know, like, yeah, this video probably should take off fairly well, at least for my audience. Again, it may be later than a lot of other reviews, but I'm actually perfectly okay with that because, again, I'd really rather have technically correct content that's been tested thoroughly and accurately.
So quality, not quantity. I go the other way. I'm the
Absolutely.
shotgun approach. I think I'm almost daily, and I'll just get stuff out there as much as I can. I had one do really, really well that I had no idea. My 2 kickers, hooking up 2 kickers
that's
with
great.
one single chain. That was after a day's work. I had, I thought I'll kick back. And this will be a bit of interesting fun. Does 200 watts plus 200 watts equal 400 watts on the bike with 2 kickers in series, not in parallel? Yes, in parallel will be even harder. And yeah, it did. It was 400 watts on the bike, give or take a little bit of loss with the chain, things moving around. That video did really, really, really well. Wasn't a technical video, wasn't a how-to. It was a bit of craziness. Also, I've got to mention the ceramic speed video that I just threw Ray the camera for at Eurobike. Now we did, how many videos did we do at Eurobike? Probably 15 videos.
I lost track, yeah.
A lot of videos. That was just another one. Ray's like, throw me the camera. Okay, sit down here, talk about this, done, upload. Let's go have some lunch. Let's get another video done. And that just went kaboom.
That was a one-shot wonder too. That was one shot all the way through. I leaned down in front of a crowded, like there's a bike on the floor in the middle of nowhere.
Make our own space there,
Yeah, and I just leaned down right in front of him. Shane just owned it, and one shot in 2.5 minutes or whatever it was for the actual on the piece shot there, and that was it.
We weren't first to market. GCN had a video out. I think Cycling Tips had something out about it as well. I wasn't first, but it just hit the algorithm.
Yeah.
So my answer on that one, we've got no idea what's going to work. I mean, 2 kickers together, that's just stupid. It did get quite a few downvotes and upvotes as well, because I was having a bit of fun. But yeah, the ceramic speed driving one. Also, I've got an espresso coffee machine fix video as well, which is doing really well. That's very left field for mine, but cyclists and coffee. Right, do you know what's going to be a success as a post or as a video?
Generally, yeah. Generally, because I know my audience. For me, it's more about knowing the audience than it is necessarily knowing the product. Like I know which brands tend to do better from a view standpoint, not from a product standpoint. So a product can do poorly, but the posts do well. And a great example of that is the Vantage V, right? From a product standpoint, this is not trending well from a how the review will go perspective or anything like that. But from a view standpoint, it's doing fantastic. So like my YouTube views on this are insane, they're awesome. My site views and site comments are really, really good. And so it's interesting. Sometimes that's a case where I didn't expect it to do as well as it did from a view standpoint. Some brands are easier. Like I more or less know that my GoPro videos, my drone videos on YouTube will do well. Like
your production of those this year was really, really good.
Yeah, but I've had to learn the hard lessons on some of those too. Like catering to the GoPro and drone audience is very, very, very different than catering to a cycling audience. It's just a different category of people. So if I'm making a video about some $1,500 cycling trainer or something like that, that attracts a different clientele, if you will, than a GoPro or a drone. It's different age ranges and all that kind of stuff, and different maturity levels is a nice way of putting that. So you have to change how you approach those. And so I've kind of figured that out and figured out what works well. And so I generally do know what's going to work and what's not going to work. Still, there are randoms. Like for me, figuring out the difference between a so-so result and that was pretty solid result is harder to tell. So that's like, there's a Ruby video I put out yesterday. That's
doing
trending really, really well.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that would have been like, so-so, but it was an easy thing for me to shoot yesterday with your help. So I was like, I'll just knock this out. That's doing really well. So yeah.
Okay, finally, the equipment we use. And a lot of people say, I want to start a YouTube channel or I want to start producing reviews of content, but I'm going to wait till I buy a camera. I need to wait to buy a microphone. All my stuff is consumer level gear. From the phones, we're using an iPhone to record audio with a simple lav mic here. The camera here is straight from a camera store. It's actually a still camera. It's not actually a movie camera. All my point and shoot cameras are just in movie mode. So one thing I have to say is that I don't use anything other than just the techniques to putting that all together to make videos. Green screen helps, and the chroma key, that's in software. Yeah. So again, that's software you can download on this PC. So Des, do you use anything that's commercial? Or it's all consumer level stuff?
It's all consumer level stuff, yeah.
Okay.
I started with an iPhone just like anybody else, just kind of filming myself like that. And now I'm on a Panasonic Micro Four Thirds system as well. And for lighting, I use an $80 Amazon softbox lighting kit.
Yep. And that's what all these are here.
Yeah, absolutely.
People I'm sure came to the studio for the open house were like, there's all these fancy lights up here. Look, these are cheap lights. They're 2 sets of lights for $80, and
it's all about how you use it. There's definitely some crappy gear out there for sure. And you'll have some situations where, like for instance, I had some bulbs that were labeled as 5500K in terms of color
yeah.
temperature. They weren't quite 5500K in temperature, and then all my stuff turned out green. So, there's going to be little finicky things like that, but for the most part, I think it's all going to be about how you use your gear.
Yeah.
We're not on $80,000 cameras from YouTube or 360 cameras or tripods and like what
Or $1,000 mics.
Yeah,
Like
actually,
all these mics here are $50 mics.
yeah.
Yeah, I use a $3 lab mic actually, so yeah.
There we go. So it's all about how you use the tools. So if you're looking at putting content together, grab the phone and start shooting. That's the best thing you can do. A lot of my videos I will do and thinking that, this is just a test. I'm just auditioning myself for the video I'll shoot tomorrow. 99 times out of 100, I'll use that content to put up, and that'll be it. So it's about that, just shooting it, one shot go, edit it up, and get it done. And mine's all on the Mac. You're a Mac?
I'm on a Mac as well.
Ray?
Oh boy, this is
So, I mean, look, I worked for Microsoft for over a decade. So
he does do by Final Cut Pro. By
Windows
the way.
Update installing? Clippy, would you like to produce it? That's who writes all the articles, Clippy.
Yeah, exactly. So I edit everything on a Mac. So I edit all my videos on a Mac, and that's the only thing I use my Mac for is videos, content, and stuff. Inversely, I use my PC for everything else. So I use it for all posts, all Lightroom, all that kind of stuff is this here. But yeah, on equipment, I don't need anything super fancy. Like I have some fancier stuff that I have around, but I don't use it half the time because it just ends up taking so much time to set up that
Back to the production,
and it's just not worth it. Like I find for me, I call them one-shot wonders, right? You start, you record one shot all the way through, one take, be done with it, publish it.
Even when
whatever.
you're filming by yourself, there's high fives going to yourself when you're like, I nailed that. There's always, it's always so much handier.
Sense of relief almost.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Alrighty, speaking of, it's time to go. Thanks guys for the Roundtable version 3. This is more of a casual chat about behind the scenes of what it takes. Again, not a how-to, but just showing people that it's not commercial level gear, it's not anything special, it's just getting it done. So yeah, if you're looking at starting something like this, just again, as I said, pull out your phone, hit go, and hit upload.
Do it.
Someone will watch.
Indeed.
All right, thanks guys. Time for lunch.
Absolutely.
Back for the live stream shortly.
Let's go. See you later.
Thanks. Okay, Google, shut off all studio.
I really stumbled through the start of that.
I don't know how to help with that. I'm still learning.
Yes, you definitely are. Okay, Google, shut off studio.
But it's just.
We could have gone on.
Nothing's playing right now.
Hey Google, turn off all studio.
Okay, turning 5 things off.
Every time.